Ms. Carter, if you could call roll.
Roll call. Councilmember Thomas.
Present.
Councilmember Druso. Councilmember Harris. Councilmember King. Councilmember Green.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Now that we have a quorum, I move approval of the minutes from the September 27th Public Works, Sanitation, and Environmental Committee meeting. Move, second by Councilmember Harris. Aye. All in favor? Ayes have it, so ordered. Next item on the agenda.
We have a discussion regarding Richards Disposal's response to the city's RFP number 3185 curbside solid waste and recyclable materials collection service area 1. We have presenters are Dan Devalier and Alvin Richards of Richards Disposal.
If you guys could report to the table, please identify who you are, the company, and start your presentation.
Good morning, council members. I'm Alvin Richard, the owner of Richards Disposal.
And good morning. I'm Daniel Davalier, legal counsel for Richards Disposal. And we're here this morning to talk about a proposal from Richards Disposal that was submitted to the city of New Orleans in lieu of the new RFPs proposed for solid waste collection and curbside recycling in what was called Service Area 1 under the current contracts. It's the Uptown, Mid-City, and other areas of the East Bank, as well as Algiers. The current contract that Richards Disposal has started in 2017. The initial 7-year term is set to expire on March 31st of 2024 next year. The city put out an RFP for bids to take over starting April 1 of 2024. We now have contractors that have been selected. In fact, Richards was selected as one of the new RFP service providers for Algiers only. Ivy Waste was selected to provide the East Bank services. We know how much those RFPs would cost. However, the current contracts also allow the city to extend the current term for an additional 3 years at a negotiated price that's mutually acceptable between Richards Disposal and the city. So Richards Disposal sent us a letter to the city dated September 25, 2003, outlining a proposal pursuant to which, if the city elects to extend the current contract for an additional 3 years, the city would realize savings versus the amount payable under the new RFPs of over $6.5 million per year and over $19.5 million over the 3-year term of the potential extensions of the contract. We wanted to bring that to the attention of the city council so that you guys had an opportunity to consider that. We believe that Richards Disposal is providing service that meets the needs of the citizens in its area. The complaints that they're experiencing over the last several months since the city settled a dispute with Richards Disposal and Richards bought more trucks and increased the pay for all of its employees are minimal. In fact, it's fair to say that over 99.9% of the collections of solid waste and recycling are performed by Richards Disposal Services without any complaints. The number of complaints
In that service area.
in their service area, correct, which again is referred to as Service Area 1. But he's been servicing that area actually since 2017. He did since 2007. I'm sorry. It was an initial 10-year contract where he serviced the same area for 10 years under that prior contract, 2007 and 2017. And the current contract, again, the initial 7-year term expires at the end of March next year. The city has the right to extend it for 3 years. So the issue for the council's consideration is whether or not it's worth spending an additional $19.5 million to do new contracts, or do you extend the current contracts for 3 years and at a very substantial savings. I'm sure you guys are going to be going into your budget hearings next month. There'll be lots of people saying they could use that money for other needs of the city. We wanted to bring that to your attention. we're happy to answer any questions about the proposal or any other questions for Richard's disposal. Mr. Richard is here, can answer any questions about his services.
Well, the mayor's presenting her budget tomorrow, so you guys may be just in time. Councilmember Harris.
Well, to the point about the mayor, have you spoken to the administration about your proposal and what's their response?
Yeah, good question, Councilmember Harris, and thank you. I probably should have mentioned that. We did receive a response from the Chief Procurement Officer for the City of New Orleans, Julian Mayer. And it said, the administration reviewed and considered your proposal. However, the administration seeks to move forward with the ongoing contracting process for Service Area 1 and Service Area 4, which is Algiers, ahead of the planned April 1, 2024 transition date. So there was not any substantive explanation, but that was a response we received on October 5th of 2023.
And since that time of that response, have you tried to reach out to the administration, the mayor? Mr. Thread is here, Gilbert Montano. I mean, I just don't see how the city council has any authority to do what you're asking. And look, I'm new to the council, but I'm not that new. I think it's a contract between the administration and Richards. So my question is, have you approached the administration about your proposal?
Yeah.
Other than Mr. Julian?
We've offered to meet with the administration. They've not been asked to meet to discuss this any further. And to be clear, we're not asking the council to force the administration to exercise the extension options. But as I know, you know, Councilmember Harris, any new contracts would require city council approval. And if someone's asking you to approve new contracts that cost $19.5 million more and to spend city taxpayer dollars that are not necessary to have the garbage picked up, I would think that is squarely within the purview of the city council to make a decision as to whether or not those new contracts would be approved or not.
Yeah, sure, but I still don't, I'm just struggling with what we can do as a city council, right? To force an extension of a current contract. I think that this is the administration's issue. I'm glad that y'all are here before us and bringing this issue to us, but I do think that ultimately, and we have legal counsel, I think this is something that y'all need to bring to the mayor, to Mr. Montano, to Mr. Thread.
Right. I'm surprised to hear that the council feels like it doesn't have authority to weigh in on this. In any event, what I would.
It's a single council member. It's me. Wait,
I know.
it's me saying, so don't, I don't know what
Right.
Mr. Green or Mr. Thomas
True.
think, but Ms. Harris here, I'm struggling with it as a legal matter, as a matter of city charter, as a matter of authority.
Well, let me try to put it this way, respectfully. I think that if there's a request to the city to approve new contracts that would require the expenditure of $19.5 million more than the city has to spend to have the garbage picked up in this area, the council can say, we decline to approve those new contracts. And we suggest to the administration by resolution or otherwise that you explore the alternative proposal to have the vendor that's currently providing the service continue at a significantly reduced price to the city. I think that's part of the checks and balances. You referenced the city charter. The administration can't just encumber the financial assets of the city over a long period of time without the council weighing in and approving it. That's why we have a budget committee. That's why the city council has to approve the budget. So I guess we're asking you less to do something and more not to do something. So I think we should consider whether new contracts that are much more expensive should be approved or not. And that's not currently on an action item for the council today. We wanted to make sure that everyone understood the alternative because the garbage has to be picked up. And we all know that, but there is a viable alternative that would cost substantially less money. And we think it would be fiscally irresponsible not to consider that prior to approving any contracts that would cost the citizens much more money.
And again, I don't want to argue with you, Daniel, you and I are friends, known each other for years. But the step of coming before the council before, exploring more with the administration on an extension that you said has to be authorized between the administration and agreed upon by your client and the administration. I just think maybe this is a step too early, premature.
Well, duly noted. I do want to point out, we did reach out to the administration first. We sent a letter to the administration we asked for a meeting to discuss it. We received a response that I just quoted back to you. I believe you have a copy of it. So we're not trying to circumvent the administration in any way, but I think the council has a voice in this process for the approval of new contracts. And I think it's important information for the council to know prior to moving forward on any proposed new contracts. That's why we're here to share that information. But thank you, and I do acknowledge our professional and personal friendship, and I hold you in high regard, and thank you for doing a good job for the citizens of our city.
Yeah, I just love it when see lawyers banter. If that doesn't wake you up, nothing else does. I'm not an attorney, and usually when I sit in our meetings or executive session, or I usually wait to hear what Councilmember Harris has to say because of my respect for her and her legal expertise, and she's usually kind of down the middle in understanding both sides. But maybe sometimes I'm called the current historian because I kind of know about what was, what is, and what can be. And one thing we know about this particular council, I have a whole list of areas where they got involved. That was administrative, that was budgetary, and that was, in many cases, executive functions. And that's because everybody up here fights for accountability. And the last thing I do know, after listening to Jim Singletons and Arthur Taylors and Joe Russos of the world, when it comes to the money and budgeting, then the charter says we have absolute authority. It's hard to move forward with something if it isn't funded. And then that's where the lawyers can get involved and the like. But I think what you're, and Mr. Richards and the people who are concerned about this, especially with the savings, are taking advantage of is probably one of the most aggressive, responsible councils, and not just relying on the administration to say what is and what we will do. But if there are other opportunities, especially with 19 to $20 million of savings, you know, the ARPA funds is going to run out. I don't think we were growing an ARPA tree out there, even though sometimes, depending on the issue, we act like we are, and that's all of us, because I want to fund everything in my district, right? Everything I like. But what I think you guys are doing today is the appropriate, most responsible thing. And that's why I gave it an agenda item on the hearing. Because $19 million is a lot. And I would think that anybody prudent and responsible, from us to the administration, to the CAO, to our finance department, if there's a way you can save 19 or $20 million, especially in light of the fact that the reports have come out with increased performance, complaints have pretty much gone away. I would think that someone who's ultimately trying to be fiscally and socially responsible would at least take some time to see if your numbers match our numbers, and maybe someone independently could talk about all our numbers to at least give this the proper hearing and proper, I would say, attempt to detail to see if that is a possibility. And I would say for the folk who wrote these contracts, you wouldn't have a potential for a 3-year extension if there wasn't cause, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm talking like one now. If there wasn't cause or opportunity to do that. So if I said anything wrong, I'm sure you lawyers will let me know.
I think you got it right, Councilman Thomas.
Councilmember Green.
Yes, I believe these public hearings are always a good idea. It gives the public an opportunity to hear and to even potentially weigh in on what the issue is that's being discussed. So clearly the administration would not want to turn down an opportunity to save money, but I think that it's fair to go through the process. I appreciate the work that you've done, but it's going to be asked of us What is the difference that allows you to save $6 million versus what the city is looking for? That issue cannot be ignored. It may not necessarily be something that we as a council want to insist be in place if the administration is making those recommendations. But I don't want anybody to go away saying that the city or the or the council, the city being the mayor or the council, would pass up the opportunity to save $6.5 million per year if it was going to be an apples to apples discussion. So could you describe to the public what those differences are?
Yeah, Councilman Green, that's a really good point. And primarily, the difference is not in the services to be provided. It's still going to be once a week solid waste collection and once a week recycling collection. The biggest difference that accounts for the delta here is the RFPs require the purchase of brand new garbage trucks. Very expensive acquisition upfront, and that's why you have a long-term contract to finance that over a 7-year period. The contract extensions would not require that new capital expenditure. So that's where primarily the savings come from there. The other components of the savings are under the proposal, the RFP contemplates payment for 82,000 service locations, primarily homes or small commercial buildings with less than 4 units in an apartment complex. The proposal from Richards Disposal is he will service all of them, but only be paid for 74,000 locations. That's a significant difference in the cost. So he's going to bear that expense. The final component is the price per location. And so under the RFPs, the prices are higher. Again, that's understandable because you got to make the large capital expenditure upfront to buy brand new trucks. $18.75 per location is the extension price. I think the renewal, the new RFP prices are either going to be $22.97 per location, or I'm sorry, $25 per location. Here's the one for Ivy Waste is $22.97 per month per location, and the Algiers cost will be $25 per month under the new proposal that requires the larger capital expenditure. Again, we submit that new trucks are not required to continue to provide the service that's being provided over the next 3 years. The trucks are well maintained. He has some new trucks in his current fleet now. I think he's rolling 23 trucks in these combined service areas currently, and he's prepared to continue that level of service for the next 3 years without requiring the acquisition of brand new trucks.
Well, I think that it's also, I wouldn't want to put undue pressure on in any area. So I guess I'll ask this question. Why would you collect at 82,000 locations and only charge for 74? Why would we as a city even want Mr. Richards, who is, a contractor who has to meet his bottom line like anybody else? Why would we want him to have 8,000 more collections than he's able to charge the city for? And I would be opposed to that. To be honest with you, I believe that if you provide the service, then you should get paid for the service. But I understand that there were nuances, and I just always want the public to be involved with the nuances.
No, good point. And let's talk about the history of that. Under the initial 7-year contract, the house count for these service areas was fixed, and he was being paid for 69,000 homes prior to the settlement from a few months ago. At that settlement, there was an agreed adjustment to move it to 74,000. When the new RFPs came out is when we realized that there are actually 82,000 locations in that service area. And that's what the city agreed to pay under the new RFP. In order to maximize the savings to the city and the residents, Mr. Richards said, I just recently got the increase to 74,000. If I get another 3 years, we will continue to service all the locations as they've been doing for the last 7 years and not be paid for every single location. Your fairness and equitable point is duly noted. I personally would agree with you. The rationale for why Mr. Richards is proposing this is, again, to maximize the savings to the city and make it more viable for the 3-year extensions to be put in place, which would avoid him having to lay off 50 of his employees. And so why is he doing it? Because it's in the best interest of his company and his employees, and it would result in very substantial savings to the city.
I just wanted to be clear that the city was involved with the authorization of a payment, which was a settlement because Mr. Richards did state and did have numbers to show that he was collecting more than he was being paid for.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can dispute that. The records
Yeah,
are very
I
clear.
don't, yeah, I
It's
know,
being
but
paid.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I don't necessarily
Right.
see, I understand what you're doing, but I don't necessarily see if it's a valid and legitimate reason to collect that 82,000, why we would get into the same issue that we just had, even willingness. But I want to make this clear. I want to bring that out, that issue to the public, because I will be asked about it. I'll be asked about it tonight at a community meeting that I'm going to in District D. So, off Pines Village, for example. So I'll be asked about that because people are watching. Because somebody's gonna say to me, why would the city make Mr. Richards pick up at 82,000 when he's only getting paid for 74? It's a voluntary effort on his part. I appreciate that.
For the record, he would have no objection to being paid for all the houses that he services if that comes up, just so, just to be clear.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a whole nother business one-on-one.
Right.
Discussion, and there's so many other line items that would be involved in that. You know, I could agree to pick up Mars. If I already have my equipment up there on Mars, then I don't have to insert fine equipment into my Martian trash pickup. So there's a lot of different variables that include that. Anything else on this particular issue?
Look, I think we're clear. We're open to having further dialogue with the administration or whoever on behalf of the city wants to address this further. Reach out, let us know. We're open to meeting and discussing this in more detail. Again, from a timing standpoint, the current contract expires at the end of March next year. So there is some time.
One question do I have, and I know lawyers like to use precedent in history when they're debating or dealing with cases. Are there any cases where extensions have been granted in lieu of the fact that there are new bids or new contracts to be let, where they took advantage of the extension because it was in the best interest of the city and the citizens?
Yeah, actually, the precedent is this contract in this city. So the prior contract that was signed in 2007
Mhm.
had a 7-year initial term and 3 individual renewal options. The prior mayor, Mayor Nagin, before he exited,
Mhm.
asked the company Richards, would they agree to take a reduction for 1 year in exchange for the exercise of the options for 3 years? And Richards agreed, and those 3-year extension options were exercised, and that contract ran for the full 10-year duration. So there's an immediate precedent, which was the prior contract that we're talking about now.
Right, so this isn't anything new.
No.
The city's taken advantage of opportunities before, when opportunities present themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you pointed out, I mean, that language is in the contract for a reason. It is to give the city an option to evaluate whether extending the contract term is a better alternative to entering into new contracts. Normally, we don't know exactly how much the new contracts will cost. In this case, we do know because they've been let out through an RFP and we know the numbers that have been selected. So we're in an unusual position of knowing exactly what that cost would be for the alternative.
Councilmember Green.
Sometimes the line of questioning that I ask will be brought to me at the meetings that I attend. So I just want to make it absolutely clear on the record. I know of Richards Disposal's work. I've seen it when I was the head of the New Orleans Regional Business Park, when he was in New Orleans East off Old Gentilly Road with all the problems that area presents. I've seen and met with the people that he employs. I know his heart. I know that he's very, very interested in not only his business, but the city of New Orleans. So I just want to make that clear that when I ask those questions, I have a desire to be fair to Mr. Richards and also to work with the administration who, is the chief executing entity relative to these types of contracts. So, Mr. Richards, just without a doubt, I make it clear to you that I appreciate your work and your company and what it's done over the years in our city of New Orleans and the way that you do business even outside of the city of New Orleans, and you employ people who many times did not have an opportunity to be employed. I hope that there can be additional meetings, certainly to work things, work out whatever might be. But I also defer to the importance of working with the administration. And this is an opportunity that is being presented to us to converse with Mr. Richards and to you And I haven't heard from the administration other than the letter that you have. That's all.
Well, we'll see when we finish this portion of the hearing, if there's a response from, the administration, we'll give them that, opportunity, but, well, this is a hearing. These committees, we bring things forth to this committee, especially now with this council, people bring a lot of things before this council because it's not a rubber stamp, right? We brag about the fact that how different it is now, and we're willing to look into stuff and investigate stuff and, you know, see if 1 + 1 = 2. So what I think Mr. Davalier and Mr. Richards did was take advantage of this opportunity. You know, we're not here in favor of the city not entering into a sound and fair contract. We're not here if it's to take advantage of an opportunity to give preference to anyone or another. But any sober, sane, or responsible person, especially these days, as someone said, there's potential $6.5 million a year, $19.5 million, especially where there's precedent. To take a look at that, I don't know who wouldn't. For me, but there's also another issue, Councilmember Green. The very first meeting we had on this issue, and maybe they need to pull up my tape. And I said, especially when these 2 African-American contractors were under fire, is that what was the plan to replace that level of economic input, philanthropy, social standing in our community? I said that on the record. How do you, in a city where when you talk about African-American economics and per capita economics and household economics, right? And we need to be versed on that because you don't take away from something from the community that needs the most and think you're going to add something just by adding another service. And it's obvious that we haven't thought about that because here we are, and moves like this don't just impact that company. It impacts the community. And at some point, we're gonna have to be conscious of that, given the fact that Black people are becoming poorer in this town. And that doesn't mean you're against anyone else. And I know we're afraid to use that word today, unless we're talking about crime, unless we're talking about poor schools, unless we're talking about poor neighborhoods. But I would think that every white, Hispanic, Asian, a businessman, especially if you have an interest in this city, would want the Black community to be economically sound, would want Black men and businesswomen to be on stable grounds. And elected leaders are afraid to talk like that now. And in many cases, people who are allies are afraid to talk like that now, but we support them anyway. I guess I'm just in a place where it is what it is. So while this may or may not be an opportunity, we have to be conscious of the impact that it has on the entire community, especially since it's not new, especially since it has a social and economic impact, and especially since the good of the few can impact the whole. And this is one of those places where it can. Mr. Davila, anything else you want to add or you want to say to this?
I think Mr. Richard just wanted to make
Mr.
one
Richard.
comment about the precedent. He knows the precedents a lot better than I do. He's been in this
Yeah, I do too.
about 40 years, and so do you. Right?
That's why I asked the question.
Well, just to answer your question about the extensions and the rest that you asked that, I've been in the business now for 45 years. 37 of those years I've been working for the city of New Orleans from 1985 to now under Dutch Morial when he privatized the city. And at no time from that mayor to the present situation that we're in now, has any one of the mayors ever not given a 3-year extension. So all of the contracts that we have had over the years the extensions has all been honored, other than presently.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, two things. I'm sorry, I have an appointment, and I need to leave at 12:40, but I did want to hear from the administration now before I leave. I have some questions specifically, and Matt, Corey, Matt or Joe, I don't know who wants to come up, but, specifically why not extend? Why an RFP instead of an extension? And why are new trucks called for in the RFP? Did you get all that?
Mr. Torrey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Hey, good morning, council. Thank you for
Good
having me.
morning.
Matt Torrey, Director, Department of Sanitation. Happy to sit here, at the table with Alvin and Daniel. I've certainly worked with Alvin for a long time now with my tenure at the city of New Orleans. But, for the Department of Sanitation in the city, over the past 2 years, we really have been on a mission to transform solid waste and recycling collection across the city. We took a huge step with the award of our new contracts for Area 2 and 3 in 2022. And with the award of the new contracts for Area 1 and 4, we're extremely excited about moving forward with IV waste in Area 1 and Richards Disposal in Area 4. And we've already initiated our transition meetings and started to move forward with that process because there is a lengthy lead time that happens with transitioning these contracts of this size from a people and equipment, a planning perspective. There's a lot of logistics that go into that, but the new contracts that the city has moved to in service area 2 and 3, and that we are in the process of moving to for areas 1 and 4, provide for increased equipment quantities, new equipment, and new equipment types. It also provides for enhanced technology on that equipment that the city's never had when it comes to GPS, 360-degree view cameras on that equipment, and route management software. These contracts provide for higher wages and benefits and worker safety programs for the employees that actually provide the service. And they also provide for a free second trash cart for locations in those service areas to help with containerizing their debris. So all of those enhancements have resulted in enhanced service levels in service areas 2 and 3. Residents saw an immediate return on investment on the increased costs associated with those contracts when we launched them, both in the form of a significant reduction in miscollections, but also an absence of leakage from trucks in their service areas, which has plagued the city for a long time. When we look across the city, across our service areas, and we look at miscollection complaints, the percentage of miscollection complaints in the new service areas are significantly lower than the areas which we are seeking to put these new contracts in place with the enhanced services. When I say significant, I'm talking about multiples of 10, not 10%, but hundreds of percent less. And the 311 data is there for anyone who wants to look at it. The benefits of our new contracts with the technology on our trucks is that when there is a miscollection in the new service area and the contractor believes that it wasn't because the cart maybe wasn't curbside or something happens, they immediately pull the video footage from their truck and they share that video footage with the resident and say your cart wasn't curbside. They attach it to the 311 request. And we're seeing our new contractors close out upwards of 70 to 80% of their miscollection complaints as invalid. So when you tack that on top of the already lower number of miscollection complaints, that gap gets even bigger. We go from 300% difference of miscollections to several 1,000% difference in miscollection complaints from our new collection areas to our existing service areas. So when the city set out on this path to move forward with letting new RFPs, there was no mystery of the fact that it was going to cost more money. We already knew, we had a precedent that it was because we had the contracts for service area 2 and 3. We submitted a budget before these contracts were awarded, and our estimate came back almost exactly at what we saw. So the sanitation department, the city knew it was going to cost more money. I think where we are coming at from this and why we are looking forward to moving forward with the contracts with Richards Disposal and IB Waste for the new service areas is because we believe that all residents in all neighborhoods deserve to experience that new equipment and that enhanced service level. Service area 2 and 3 already have. We want to bring that new enhanced service level to service area 1 and 4 as well and bring parity to the city. And I think we're really excited about this. I think this has been a long time coming for the city. And I think we're, partnering with Richards Disposal and IB Waste to bring these new contracts to bear for areas 1 and 4.
Mr. Cavalier,
Yeah, thank you.
and questions from council members.
Yeah, I want to address a couple of things that Mr. Torrey said. With respect to the difference in the number of missed collection complaints, I'm not sure where he's drawing his data from. It has to be comparing it to problems that existed during the pandemic and Hurricane Ida. Because again, recently, since the settlement occurred, the missed collection complaints in Mr. Richards Service Area 1 are very minimal. And I know, given recent events, Mr. Torrey would not want to misrepresent to the city council factual information. Maybe we could get the data and compare it. It's just simply not accurate. I mean, I think there was about 50 complaints in a month. Mr. Richards Services, in terms of collections, you're talking about over 500,000 collections that once a week collect garbage collection and once a week recycling. And so the percentage of complaints that he has are very, very minimal, less than 1/10 of 1%. So that's again, 99.9% being done without any complaints over the past several months, which is also historically fairly accurate prior to the pandemic and Hurricane Ida. In terms of the new technology that he referenced, Mr. Richard can address this directly, but he is committed to adding, he already has GPS capabilities in his trucks, and he is committed to adding the 360-degree cameras to his existing trucks prior to April 1, when the extension periods would start. So the city and the residents would have the same exact benefit of the new technology that is contemplated under the RFP. And again, those are things that we could have clarified with a private discussion ahead of time.
Mr. Torrey,
So just to respond, I mean, the 311 data is publicly available, but I'm happy to share our aggregate reporting with Daniel or Mr. Richard or any of you all. But I guess just to give some perspective so last month, September 2023, Richards Disposal had 421 missed collection complaints for that month. IB Waste for Service Area 2 at 87. When you discount the invalids, they had 16 missed collection complaints. We're comparing 16 versus 421. August 2023, Richards Disposal had 446 missed collection complaints. IB Waste had 104, discounted for the invalids, 29. So the data's there. I'm not saying that Richards hasn't made incredible strides since the settlement. You're right. In the month of January 2023, Richards had 4,700 missed collection complaints. So we're down from 4,700 to an average of 500. That's a tremendous improvement, and no one is disputing that. And again, I want to reiterate, I am here looking forward to partnering with Richards on their new contract for Service Area 4 and further improving the service level for all residents of New Orleans through that new contract. But the data is there. I'm happy to share it. I'm not disputing that improvements haven't been made. But when you're comparing apples to apples, there is no comparison to the service area.
Yeah,
you say you're happy to share it, but it should have been shared.
I mean, Councilmember Thomas,
Yeah, I'm just saying. It's
you say it should have been shared. Can you
you,
explain?
that information is important.
But
Have you shared that with our officers yet? Did you know that, council member?
Let me say this. As someone who represents the service area where the RFP is issued or the extension, the missed collections from Richards has significantly decreased, but we still get calls.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, you all represent service areas 2 and 3. I just don't know what your office
I
are
don't think
experiencing.
those calls.
Well, I'm getting calls
Right,
in my service
right,
areas.
right.
I mean, that's right here.
I mean, we get them, but I don't get them from about Richard.
Yeah, I still do. And so I see that data. I understand the
Okay.
data. My question though is, we talk about worker parity, making sure that salaries are the same. So I don't know what IB Waste is paying their hoppers versus what Richards will pay or does pay. If there's a cost of living increase baked into the RFP contracts, I'd like to talk about worker parity and making sure that the workers who are actually collecting our waste are getting paid what they deserve going forward, because as much as it's two companies fighting, but we really need to think about the people who are on the ground collecting our trash. So can y'all talk about that?
Yes, we will. And then thank you for pointing that out because it's an area that Mr. Richard is happy to address. Before we move off the miscollections, I do want to put those numbers in perspective. Again, as Mr. Torrey said, there were 421 complaints of miscollections. Let's assume they're all valid, even though we know that's not the case. 500 is less than 0.1% of the total monthly collections. He's collecting monthly over 500,000 collections. If you had 421 collections, that means 99.9% of the collections are done without a complaint, assuming all the complaints are valid. That is an unbelievable track record. You should be talking about how great that service is and the acknowledgement that the 360-degree camera shows that not all these complaints are valid. He's agreed to add that technology as well. But the issue for the council will be, is that worth an extra $6.5 million a year and $19.5 million over 3 years? In terms of the employee pay, I'm gonna let Mr. Richard address that directly because he just recently gave significant increases to all of his employees.
While Mr. Richard is getting his information, and before I get Councilmember Green, what's the industry average for complaints?
I mean, there is no industry average I could point to. I mean, it's a wide range depending on the
Metropolitan
service level. I couldn't point to one. I mean, I can tell you, for the city historically, getting back to 400 or 500 miscomplaints a month was a major milestone for us from where we were after Hurricane
So
Ida.
that was an accomplishment.
It was, but I think, to Daniel's point though, it certainly is an accomplishment, but when you're comparing apples to apples, it's very hard to look past the fact you're right. 400 miscollection complaints to 20 miscollection complaints. That is a huge delta, and there is a value that comes along with that. And I know Councilmember Harris and your offices can attest to that. I mean, Councilmember Green, I can't tell you the last time you've sent me a miscollection complaint for your service area. It really doesn't happen. And if it does, rarely we promptly respond. And I think that is a luxury that comes with the new contracts, is that we don't have to worry about collections being missed anymore. We don't have to worry about leakage on our streets. We don't have to worry about employees wearing uniforms and having PPE. We don't have to worry about those things. They are embedded in these contracts. And I think all neighborhoods across the city deserve to have that same level of enhanced service, and all of the workers for all of these contracts deserve to share in that as well.
Mr. Richards, employee
Yes.
pay comparisons, please.
I'd like to comment on Mr. Matt's comment. Everything that he mentioned, we have.
Pull the mic forward, please.
Everything that he mentioned, we have, other than the 360-degree cameras. And that's a good point that he made. Because if he's telling you one company had 90-something complaints, and with the cameras, it showed that 71% of them was not legitimate. I don't have those cameras. It was not called for in my contract. But could that be the same situation that I'm facing, whereas I have all the complaints listed, that just to bring up a point that Ms. Harris had sent me, that I went back through all of them and came out that we had missed pickups, that streets were blocked, streets were being paved. We couldn't go down the streets and things. Some of the homes that we collecting is calling up every week, the same address all the time. And where I'm at, a lack of that information is with that 360-degree camera, which if I do get the extension, I will put on a truck. But Mr. Matt made a good point. How many of my 500 complaints is not legitimate? And it's to tell you, as of today, and this is everything from the 10th month, I have 15 recycle calls, 21 order for courts, 76 repairs, 30 of them was done yesterday. So I have 46 complaints. And on the bulky waste, I have 86 complaints. We have 7 days to pick those up. And so the bottom line is that's going to dwindle down to nothing by the end of this week. We'll be done with those. And every month or every week we get new ones. Because I do have a person that's on top of this that we're looking at. And since y'all made the settlement with me to do other things starting in March, our service has increased. It's better. We were able to increase our pay, minimize our complaints. Ms. Harris can attest to that. And the things have been better. I'm not losing employees and I'm running more trucks because my employees now are not quitting because they're receiving a better wage and they have better benefits. And so right now in-house, we're doing as good as anybody can do. And when you add my complaints against 513,000 complaints a month and tell me I have 100 complaints, what does that equal to?
Councilmember Green,
No,
the
hey,
councilman, don't pay, yeah,
To pay for the workers.
yeah.
How much I'm paying my
Yeah.
employees? It went up from where we was at before with the minimum wage 13. I'm paying $17 for hoppers, $19 for drivers, all the way up to $25 per hour. I pay about an hour. And I have benefits, hospitalization and 401k plans and the rest that's all for John.
And how does that compare to Ivy, Mr. Tor?
I won't seek to speak for any other companies, but we have, we did have all of our other collection companies here at your request from your last meeting, and they can speak directly to their pay.
Well, the request for the last meeting was to deal with the DBE component of that.
IB and Waste
Yeah.
here, so you can
Yeah.
direct any questions and they'll be glad to answer. Rate of pay.
We're gonna keep this here right now. All right, Councilmember Green. And then Councilmember Harris again.
I mean,
Councilmember Harris.
since Ivy Waste is here, I'd like to hear about their pay for their
Okay.
workers.
Okay.
You just, if you can stand right there, that'd be great.
So I pulled this before I came up, pulled the pay stubs. Mr. Devontae last week worked 6 days, 35 hours. His average hourly pay was $31 an hour, and I can give you his check stub to show you that. It's a hopper. Darnell worked 5 days in the New Orleans contract. He got $30. I mean, he worked 30 hours. He was at 5 days. He made $27 an hour. John, he works in recycling. He worked 35 hours, 35.2 hours. And 5 days a week, averaging $25 an hour. And I can give you all the backup to show you this. My drivers are over $31 to $33 an hour on their pay, and I can give you the check stubs to prove that.
What's their average though? What's their average weekly?
The drivers are at $30 and the hoppers are like $27 to $28 an hour.
And how many hours do they average though?
Well, the way we run our routes is we double up on our trucks so we can finish early. So they get a fixed rate if they work 4 hours or they work 3 hours. If they go help on another route, they get double that pay of $150 a day.
Okay.
And I can back it up with documentation. So we definitely pay a lot to our drivers.
I think all of us would, on the council would love documentation
Absolutely.
from both Ivy Waste and Richards about base pay and how that
No
works.
problem.
Because again, my concern, y'all got money, but the workers don't. And we
I
need to
agree.
make sure that the workers are getting paid and have benefits and can elevate themselves.
Absolutely. Everything I'm saying, I can back it up with documentation.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll provide that.
Just to answer that question too is what the pay that they're receiving for the contracts that they have, I can't afford that.
Okay,
Well, let me be clear about one thing. A day rate paid to someone is different than an hourly rate. And so it's not an apples to apples comparison. And if you're gonna get a day rate, Mr. Richards used to pay his hoppers with day rates, but they prefer to be paid hourly in some instances, especially to get additional benefits. So it would be important if you're analyzing that to make sure you're doing an apples to apples.
Yeah, and that's what we're asking for is documentation that just breaks down a base hourly rate from both y'all. And if you want to do, put in a daily rate, that's fine too, just so we can compare. Again, I'm just concerned under the law, whether or not we're just overstepping our bounds. And I'm just
Mhm.
gonna say that yet again.
Councilmember Green.
Council member, actually, my issue is a little bit different and you are running the meeting, but I'm not so sure that I can move to do what I want to do. When Councilmember Harris mentioned that she had to leave, I know that we only have 2 persons here and then that we'll lose a quorum. So on item number 4, to execute the president to sign a contract, we won't be able to move on it if Councilmember Harris is not here to vote. And so therefore it wouldn't be able to be sent to the council with a recommendation of,
Yeah, well, we need to do that while she's here.
right, so
You want to move
I'd like to move
on item, this is on item 4.
On
Do you need
item
to read it,
4.
Madam Kern? Is there anything that prohibits us from taking an item up while we have a quorum?
No, sir.
Okay,
Okay,
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Just so there's clarity. So taking up area 4 eliminates the option of extending the current contract. Area 4 is a part of the current contract, which is what the agenda item 2 was about extending. So just so you're clear, if you move forward with that, the extension
Yeah,
is gone.
Is that what the lawyer in you is saying? Or
That's
the-
just practically.
well, as a
Okay.
lawyer, I think I understand the agenda item would say that you had to add the president of the council as a signatory to any contract, and it's
Right.
not to approve the
Right,
execution of a contract. So procedurally, if you want to make sure
Right.
any potential contracts
Right.
going forward include the signature of the president of the city
this is
council.
to add the signature, not to execute the contract.
But just so you understand, area 4,
Mhm.
area 1 are a part of the current Richards contract, which is what the presentation was
Gotcha.
around extend.
That would be the new RFP contract
Gotcha.
in the event that those are eventually approved.
Gotcha. Councilman Harris, you want to jump back in?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you're right, Daniel, that if we just, the
Yeah.
number 4 is just adding JP to
Right.
the signature of the new contract if the contract goes forward.
Councilmember Green,
because it was on the agenda, I moved for
I'll
approval.
second.
properly moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, so ordered. Oh, any online comments about that item?
No, not for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councilmember Green, anything else?
No, I just wanted the public to know who's not reading this, that it was to authorize the president of the council to sign a professional services agreement between Richards Disposal and the city of New Orleans, and it just authorizes the signature being affixed to the document. It doesn't move us forward contractually.
I got a couple more questions. Mr. Torrey, are you saying that even if the savings are real, it's not worth extending Richards? Giving Richards the extension?
I'm here saying that the Department of Sanitation is firmly in favor of moving forward with the new contracts with Richards Disposal and IB Waste to fully receive the enhanced benefits and that come along with those. So yes, I'm saying that the enhanced services that we will receive through those new contracts warrant the additional pay, and then we've already seen that, have a precedent for that in service area 2 and 3.
Then my follow-up is, if Richards could provide the GPS and provide the cameras, are you still saying that the $19 million savings aren't worth it?
Yeah, the technology is a piece of the puzzle, right? The foundation of the new contracts, which was alluded to, is a new fleet.
Hmm.
The city is working off of a 7-year-old fleet of equipment, and we all see that. And we don't have different types of equipment in areas 1 and 4. The new contracts not only provide for new equipment, but they provide for different types of equipment. Grapple trucks, which are the
Mhm.
claw trucks that pick up bulk items, which I know you've seen in your service area, as well as stake body trucks, which are flatbed trucks, which will pick up tires as well as appliances and electronic waste. And electronics waste is something that's new to these new contracts as well. So when residents want to get rid of a TV or a computer, they now can do so in the new contract. So all of those things bundled together, as well as the very deliberate focus on the worker protections, the increased pay, the benefits, the PPE and the safety programs, all of that together is when we're looking holistically at those enhanced services that come with the new contracts.
Well, this issue is important to the community. We have several people who are here to speak on it. The first speaker, everyone has 2 minutes, please. And we'll try to respect each other's time. Ms. Pearl Cantrell.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I came here to speak on the character of a man that I've known to work in our community. Not just as a businessman, but as a good neighbor, as a good community person and helping people and doing it like a quiet giant. He doesn't always get the recognition for all that he gives to the community. He's a man of the city, born and raised here, moved from the bottom to the top, and has done a very good job at doing that. And he continues to try to improve upon whatever it is that he's doing. And so I came here to speak on the character of a person that I know and believe to be a very good businessman. He has proven that over and over again. I just want to address one other little thing that Councilwoman Harris said about the council not getting involved in administrative responsibilities. It took all I had not to laugh. Y'all live in administrative responsibilities. So if you find that a problem, it really is a shock to me. Thank you.
Mr. Edward Parker.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Progressive Council. I've been before you numerous times, and it's usually been about this disparity study. This disparity study that shows the lack of upward economic development in this city. This is the city's own disparity study, completed in 2018. We just had a meeting last week with a report card that's been on the books. Sanitation came in with an F. Let's look at the DBE component in these contracts. Let's find out who these DBEs are and find out why this city with over $1 billion budget has only 3 to 5% Black participation in the contracts. This particular vendor has been great for our community, economically and culturally. And it is a slap in the face to the Black community to have one of our strongest advocates brought before the council and not being given an accommodation. We need this particular vendor. He's Black, he's Orleans Parish, and this administration this mayor should be ashamed to take the contracts from these vendors.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr. Jeff Thomas. Followed by Austin Badon.
Thank you, guys. My name is Jeff Thomas. You know, my uncle says I'm a man of many hats. Today, the hat I'm wearing is one of a concerned citizen. You know, I just think that the city council's role is to make sure that this city is the best place to raise a family. And a big part of that is economic development. Richard's Disposal is a Black-owned, New Orleans-based enterprise with an earned reputation of customer service and commitment to our community for over 40 years. But the actions of this administration and the Torres, as uncoordinated as they may seem, have wrecked the solid waste collection market and increased costs unnecessarily to our customers, to the citizens of the city of New Orleans. I just think that it's really critical that what we do is support Black-owned businesses that are successful, that have been doing a great job for 40 years. When I hear Mr. Torrey talk about the changes in technology, his current trucks can be retrofitted and perform the same kind of benefits, provide the same kind of benefits that these new trucks can provide. I just think as a Black-owned businessman, as a Black businessman, I just want to support another successful Black businessman who's been doing a great job, providing a good service to this community. And I just think the council, whenever possible, should support Black-owned businesses and increase their ability to do business. If there's if for example, they fall short, we don't just yank the contract. I think what we do is support them, provide the kind of resources and assets that will make them be successful. I think that's the role of government, in the city of New Orleans to make it a better place for all of us to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bato. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Followed by W.C. Johnson.
Good morning, members. I'm Austin Badon, resident of New Orleans, 6011 Wright Road. I understand the process and bids have been awarded and the snowball's already rolling downhill. I'm here not to bash anybody, but to speak on behalf of someone who I've known my whole life, who has known me before I knew who I was, and that's Mr. Alvin Richard. This council has always prided itself on being good stewards of the public's money. Richard's disposal, and you can't argue with this, will save the city of New Orleans over $19 million. And you can't argue with that. So why would you take away a contract from the only African-American contractor left doing the job, doing it well, and saving you $19.5 million? You could hire 476 police officers with that money. Mr. Alvin employs a lot of people, but understand that many of these people are unemployable because they have criminal backgrounds. He gets these folks off the street and gives them an opportunity to be productive citizens, and that's what we want. And to take care of their families. Many of them have children, which will decrease the arrears for child support. Many are hoppers, drivers, washers, and mechanics, and et cetera, whatever needs to be done around the yard. And they perform many tasks that we would not want to do. They pick up our trash in a professional manner. Many of you, like me, remember the days when 1/4 of the trash would be left on the street. You got this nasty trail of water going down the street behind the truck. Those days are over with. Mr. Alvin follows the rules set forth by the sanitation department by putting 23 to 26 trucks on the street. And these trucks meet the requirements set forth by an ordinance that they are at 25 cubic feet, which don't tear up our streets.
Thank you.
We done?
2 minutes. We can bring him to a close.
Oh, okay, I'm almost closed. Mr. Alvin provides excellent service with minimal complaints. Mr. Alvin gives so much to the city of New Orleans community, even into areas that he doesn't serve. His biggest problem is he can't say no to anyone. His civic contributions are far too many to name in my short time here, but one that I will name is, and we've all seen it, he refurbished the basketball court on the corner of Magazine and Napoleon. Mr. Alvin has been in the sanitation business for decades and has been doing a good job for areas 1 and areas 4 since 2007.
Thank you.
In closing, Mr. Alvin doesn't want to keep the job because he's Black. He wants to keep it because he takes pride in his work and he is a professional in the way he runs his company that he built more than, decades ago.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for
Bato.
this opportunity and God bless y'all.
Thank you. Mr. Cedric Richmond, followed by Christopher Stan. Oh, WC, yeah, no, you're next. Yeah. Yeah, Cedric Richmond, Mr. Richmond follows you.
W.C. Johnson from Community United for Change. Listening to the discourse this afternoon and morning, I must admit that the situation with not only Mr. Richards, but Metro Disposal, I believe was created out of the disaster that hit New Orleans, and they used the evidence during that time to prosecute and persecute 2 prominent DBEs in this city. Now, I don't know who IV Waste is or where they came from, but I know they're not from here. I'm looking at the fact that we have lost Richards Disposal and the other disposal company, which were Blacks in this city, to 2 other non-Blacks that are here out of another parish. Now, my understanding is IV Waste and Waste Pro are owned by the same person or the same family. Torres has IV Waste, his mother has Pro Waste or Waste Pro. I believe that the council needs to look into this to find out why are we displacing our black DBEs for DBEs that really are well, I mean, are not well suited for a DBE position. Now, the residents, this gentleman from the city said the residents received immediate benefits from the new service with IV, I guess he's talking about, but I must say that's incorrect. Because once IV took over, we lost the day of collection, and we also lost the ability for blacks to be hired. The majority of IV waste employees, and I have unfortunately have picked up IV waste, seem to be Mexican or white.
Yeah, bring your comments so close.
And I think this is a disservice to the black community of New Orleans. I support Brother Richards in his endeavor to not only keep the contract, but get it increased.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Cedric Richmond, followed by Christopher Stan, please. Thank you, Mr. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not often that I'm on this side of the dais, but I thought it was important to come down today to talk about not only a fellow New Orleans citizen, but a friend. You heard Austin Badon say that Alvin Richards is a guy that doesn't say no. Let me tell you why that's important. Because when St. Aug is looking for investments, they pick up the phone and they call him. And that creates more opportunities, more hope, more everything for our kids. When I was in office, I'd pick up the phone and call him and say, this young man wants to turn his life around. All he needs is a job. You know what? He would hire him. So if we look at the intangibles that Mr. Richards and Richards Disposal brings to the table, we can't have the luxury of just looking at X's and O's and numbers, because that's not how this world works. And if you're looking at a city where we are trying to uplift our citizens, where we're trying to reduce crime, where we're trying to build the village that raises our children, then we have to look at all of those small things. And some things go back decades. When we got the Pelicans in town and we were out here trying to sell sweets and everything else so we could keep them, Alvin Richards stepped up and bought a suite. Not that he's a big basketball fan or anything else. He did it because we needed him to step up so that we could have an NBA team. Those are the types of things that Alvin brings to the table. And those are the types of things I think sometimes are lost in the conversation. So I'm just here as a person who is serviced by Richards, but also as a friend and a person who has personally benefited from the blood, sweat, and tears that the Alvin Richards of the world have laid so that a little public school kid like me could wind up in the White House. So those are my comments, and thank you, Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher Stanton, followed by Sidney Torres.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm a member of Zulu Associated Pleasure Club. And speaking of community stuff, whenever Zulu calls Mr. Richards to help out with whatever we do, he's there. We have a mentor program that we mentor 110 plus young men. And whenever we call Mr. Richards to help us out to give donations to our scholarship fund, Mr. Richards is there. When we do our Thanksgiving turkeys to the community, we call Mr. Richards, he's there. Our scholarship fund for our boys, Mr. Richards is there. So he is a good man in our community. He's a friend of mine, and I'm here to applaud him.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Torres, followed by Mr. Roland Garcia. Mr. Torres.
Thank you, Council.
You're welcome.
There's no doubt that Mr. Alvin Richards, as I call him, is the godfather of trash. He's well respected in this business, and there's no doubt about that. But this is not what it's about. What it's about is there was an RFP put out by the city of New Orleans that I relied on, and I ordered trucks. I spent the money. I got an award letter. I signed the contract. I'm waiting for it to be approved and signed by the city. I've spent a lot of money and time putting this together and going through the bid process. We were graded to win the contract, and Mr. Richards was graded to win the West Bank. When the bid came up, I was asked a question in the public bid in the grading process. If Mr. Torres, what about if you win the other part of the contract? I said I would sub it to Mr. Richards. I hope he can get it. I hope he gets the contract. I was the one that said that. I could have said, no, I want it all, and that's what I want to do. But I bid on this contract because I felt that the RFP was something that we could do. I thought that we could do, I know we can do a great job, just like we're doing in the other areas. And it's sad for me to sit up here today and see all this. And, you know, I could have brought a whole room of people. I found out about this meeting that we weren't on the meeting, on the agenda, and all of a sudden that this was going to happen with Daniel Davalier, who's also represented me before, that, you know, that there was going to be this, where all these people show up and start speaking. I do a lot in this community. I'm from New Orleans. I don't own Waste Pro. I own IV Waste. I have nothing to do with Waste Pro. My mother is not involved in my company. She's not my DBE. I have my DBE here, and he would like to speak when he filled out his card. He will speak.
Yeah.
I do a lot in the community, and I do a lot with lending money. The DBE program definitely needs an overhaul, and I know that from working in this city, and I would be more than happy to sit at the table and do that. But I'm a taxpaying citizen in the city. I live in the city. I've been living in the city since I was 12 years old, and I'm a New Orleanian, and I wish that we could all be together instead of dividing us by race.
I don't think any of us knew who wouldn't be here today. We didn't get any notices to who would come and sign up or who would speak. Mr. Davalier just asked that this be placed on as an agenda item. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Mr. Garcia, followed by Ms. Devizan.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
Good morning.
I just want to say that I think Mr. Richards is doing a fine job. And by all the stuff that he came about after the COVID and all, he did a good job, and that he should be continuing on doing a good job, providing though he's got the funds now to do it. Where he didn't have the funds earlier, everybody was getting way more than him and everything. So for me, I'm a small businessman in the 7th Ward, and he does a lot and don't ask for nothing. Like we give plates out for Thanksgiving. We do a little Christmas thing in Horton Park, and he's always been there for us. Anything we ask, he does for us. And I really think he should be able to continue to do the things like that for his community and city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Lisa Mims Devizan, followed by Ms. Carol Johnson.
Good morning, Councilman.
Good morning.
I'm here to speak on behalf of Mr. Alvin Richard and what he has been and what he has done for the community and the city of New Orleans. Mr. Richard, I've known since about 1994, 95. Mr. Richard has been a beacon of light to this community. People have not talked about what he has done, especially post-Katrina, post-Ida, the pandemic. When there was a need, Mr. Richard was there. At Southern University at New Orleans, Mr. Richard provided additional services to that community, to that campus at no cost, because he was willing to help the students, the administration, in with the tasks they needed. Mr. Richard provided services. He's also provided food for the homeless, provided bicycles for children in this community, have donated scholarship funds, and has been a person of integrity, ethics, and has worked with his morals intact. So I stand here today to say that I hope Mr. Richard has an opportunity at the extension of the contract, because I want my son and many young men to be able to look at a minority-owned businessman and say, that is the person I want to emulate. And thank you for your services, Mr. Richard. And hopefully you will have the opportunity to continue on that path to being a beacon of light for many and for providing services for those who needed it, especially when people called you and asked you to pick up in places that were not yours. You went at no cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, President Devizan. Ms. Carol Johnson, followed by Mr. Lawrence Martin.
Good morning, Carol Johnson, 2223 Peniston Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. I am an owner of a mortgage company. I provide for affordable housing for citizens in this city. $19 million could provide a lot of affordable housing in this city. I personally know Mr. Richards, and I've known what he's done in this community. When we're talking about the stats, we're talking about apples to oranges and not apples to apples. How do you expect him to pick up and pay his employees when he has not been compensated what Torres or Ivy Waste is being compensated? If I was being paid the amount of money that Mr. Torres is being paid, I would be able to pay my employees $30 an hour. You're not talking apples to apples here. You're talking apples to oranges, and it's not fair. I was at home convalescing from a kidney transplant. My whole family was home because they could not work because they had to make sure that COVID was not brought home to me because that would have killed me. We had several trash bags that needed to be picked up. Everyone was home during COVID. These trucks were driving down the street and maybe every 3 blocks, their trucks was full and they had to go back and dump. You have to take that into consideration. There was more expenses placed on these drivers with PPEs, whatever they had to purchase so that their drivers and their hoppers could be safe in the community. Ivy Waste is not faced with that. And you have to look at that. All of that needs to be taken into consideration. And to allow this contract to go out to bid without providing an extension to Mr. Richards and Richards Disposal, I just think it's absolutely horrific. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Shillington. Mr. Lawrence Martin, followed by Bishop Ryan Warner.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My question is simply why? Why are we going through this? Why? My dad was at 98 years old. And as a Black man, considered Blacks didn't get contracts at one time. Blacks did not get contracts at one time. And given the past and the present agenda and the power shows alike that Blacks are committed to the board of Black agenda, meaning that you guys should be to the point of being about the Black agenda. That's all there is to it. It ain't no rocket science. It's just that. I go on to say that Richard Disposable, among things that we or a Black community could give him, or at the least give him a garbage contract. But ain't nobody else want to got garbage. Black people ain't got nothing. We ain't got nothing. We don't own no hotel. We don't own nothing. And for Black to for the committee to be and for this committee to be stand up in front, you should at least give him a Black contract. That's what I should say. Other than that, Mr. Torres has been, forget Torres, has been Mr. Richard has been a man of distinction, a man who stood out, who stand before it, and you've heard all the accolades that's been given before you. He's a man who would do anything for anybody. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bishop Ryan Warner, followed by Dane Bowie.
Good morning, Councilmember Thomas, Harris, and Green. I hope that all is well. Bishop Ryan Warner, President and CEO of Versatile Entertainment. And of course, I'm very proud and delighted to stand in support of Mr. Richard, who has done a phenomenal job in supporting all of the aspects of entertainment and things that I bring to the community. Of course, I am born and raised here. I've been blessed to do Praise Fest for 14 years. Of course, Snowball Fest, Jingle on the Boulevard, and so many other things. And of course, without partners like Alvin Richards and Richards Disposal, I know personally things that I produce could not happen. So I'm definitely asking that we would consider extending Mr. Richards' contract so that he can definitely continue the great work that he's been doing. And also, I think that it's very important that African Americans get and keep contracts of this nature is very important. Thank you so much for allowing me to come this morning, Councilman Taylor.
Thank you, Dane Bull, Bowie. Is it B-O-U-E or B-O-W?
That's very good French.
Okay.
Thank you, council, for the
Thank
opportunity
you.
to speak. Guys, it was kind of a surprise to me that this meeting was going to be happening today and that what was going to be discussed was on the agenda. And I come to you before you as a resident of Area 1, a 10-year resident. I was uptown. I'm now in Mid-City. I heard a lot of great things about Mr. Richard, and I'm sure as a person, he's a wonderful man. However, I can attest to some very awful service, and I'm here to let you guys know that I'm not happy with the service from Richards. In 2016, pre-pandemic, pre-Hurricane Ida, I had a brand new car bumper that was scratched by one of his employees by the garbage can that they drug along the backside of my car. And when I complained about it, his supervisor, who was to go out and investigate, came back and said that there was no way a garbage can drug across the back bumper of a brand new vehicle could cause a scratch in the paint. This is what we're supposed to be dealing with a company that's been around working since 1985. I mean, come on, guys. That's not good service. The leaking trucks, the stuff left all over the ground, the funk in the neighborhoods, that's not good service. I've watched their employees throw garbage cans around, skate them across the street, dump them sometimes where residual waste landed on the ground. They picked up the can, but they left the waste on the ground. It's just not acceptable service. It's not acceptable. In Mid-City, I'm a member of the Fulberg St. John Neighborhood Association. And I can tell you that the members that I know and my neighbors were all ecstatic when we heard that Ivy was coming to our neighborhood. Because I'm sorry, but Mr. Richards has let his management go by the wayside and they're not providing good service any longer. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sam Bailey.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bailey.
My name is Sam Bailey. I've been in business in this city over 20 years. From major projects like knocking down the Magnolia Project to demolishing Walnut Square. I am the DBE for Ivy Waste, and I get paid very well for doing that. 99% of my employees are African Americans and they live in the city. Probably 98% of his employees are African Americans that live in the city. All these waste companies that I notice here in the city, they all pull from the same work pool. So no, jobs aren't going to be lost. They're going to remain in the city. The problem, one of the problems that I see is we're all in here fighting amongst each other with race and color. I've seen Mr. Torres go fix the car bathroom when they destroyed across the river. I've seen him loan his employees money to pay off their houses. I've seen him do a lot of things that if you just talk to him, you may get the answer you're looking for. My contract is I handle all the waste recycling that comes out of his area. That's transported. I don't go out and pick it up, but it's transported to my location and we deliver it to Baton Rouge to the main recycling plant. Now, I've been doing that nearly a year. I'm the guy generally people don't see. I'm behind the scenes on a lot of these major contracts here in the city. So that's why I'm here to speak on behalf of Ivy Waste, and nothing against Mr. Richards because I've been knowing him a long time too, because I have property near his facilities. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Mr. Davila, Mr. Torrey, then Mr.
Councilmember,
Torrey.
we have some online comments.
Yeah, online comments. Please.
The first comment is from Dawn Aber. She says Richards Disposal has a history of providing trash disposal service. Beginning with the owner, Alvin Richards, 45 years ago, Richards Disposal has serviced Orleans Parish for 45 years, 16 years under contract for Orleans Parish. This company employs over 200 employees. Many are hired from all walks of life, including felons, and are paid a living wage to support themselves and their families. The company is located in New Orleans East, providing much needed jobs to residents of Orleans Parish. During COVID, service continued with a limited workforce to their customers. Richards Disposal Philanthropy has provided money, time, and equipment to support improvements throughout the city of New Orleans over the years. Therefore, Richards Disposal is a great asset to the city of New Orleans, and ENONAC fully supports the request for proposals number 3185, curbside solid waste service area 1 be awarded to this company. And then we have a comment from Jeff Thomas, who, assuming this is a different Jeff Thomas than spoke before, he says Richards Disposal has provided high quality service in our city for over a decade, only until the pandemic and Hurricane Ida did any issues start. These are completely resolved. Also, the company picks up from more houses than the city pays. Now the company has a real plan to save the city $19 million over the next 3 years. Continue to use the company that the citizens love and use the money to stop crime and fix the streets and street lights. That's it for the online comments.
Thank you, Mr. Davila.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman
Thank
Thomas.
you, Ms. Carmen.
So want to wrap up by reiterating a couple of points. First, this is not in any way an attempt to vilify or disparage Mr. Torres. I've known him personally. He's a good businessman and a good corporate citizen. This is an issue that we want to focus on where the city has an option. You can go forward with new contracts pursuant to the RFP, or you can extend the current contract at a savings of over $19.5 million. Squarely, that's the issue. I want to reiterate again, there will be no difference in terms of the service, the technology, or the equipment. Mr. Torrey mentioned some additional equipment. Mr. Richards is prepared to have all of the equipment contemplated, all of the technology contemplated. Literally, the only difference we know of is it won't be brand new trucks. So if brand new trucks are worth $19.5 million, then that would be a decision for the council to make on whether it approves new contracts or not. Mr. Torres mentioned that he's already made some expenditures. That would be his decision. I know he knows that there is no contract unless the city council approves it and it's executed by the city as well. So that's the decision for the council members to make at some point. And again, we're open to continuing dialogue with the city or anyone from the council. Thank you for your time and thank you for your initiative in putting this public, making this public today. Thank you all.
Mr. Torres, any comment?
Yeah, sure. Just to wrap
Mr.
up.
McNair, I see you, were you pointing at me? I didn't have a card, but no, if you want to say something. But we didn't have a card, but go ahead. Just announce yourself who you are. Excuse me, Mr.
I'm not much of a talker, but Mr. Richards is a great fella, great gentleman. His business practice in my neighborhood, I'm a resident of New Orleans East. I stay at 5139 Eastern Circle. I had no complaints, but I'm listening to Mr. Torres, somebody said not black and white thing. We don't be divided. He's not from here. He might have lived in New Orleans since he got older, but he's from down in the parish. We don't need people coming into New Orleans, take our money and run back to Slidell and run back to Jefferson Parish or run back down to St. Bernard Parish. They don't pay their taxes here. They come here and take our money and run. Mr. Richards has been here. He's been obligated to this city. When I was state rep, I could call on Mr. Richards for anything. And as people say, he can't say no. And I think that's one of his worst qualities. He got to learn how to say no to some people. But I want to say that I support him and I want to be here when y'all extend this contract because we need, just think about the 50 employees that he's going to have to lay off if he don't get this. That affects the Black community. Our community is poor enough now. Hispanics and everybody else is coming here. And we don't have nothing. Look to Mr. Rich to get a good job. As they always say, well, he takes in people that nobody wants to hire. That's a good thing.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you very much, Mr. Torrey.
I'll just wrap up by reiterating and saying, I mean, thank you for having this meeting. Thank you for having us here. I'm happy and proud to sit here next to Alvin Richard and again, say that I really am excited and look forward to partnering with Richards Disposal for the new contract in Service Area 4 to provide that enhanced level of service and to continue to work with his team to provide that for Service Area 4. So here in the spirit of partnership and really looking forward to that in this new contract.
Mr. Richards, anything you want to say before, Councilmember Green, you have something?
No, sir, everything that was said is great. That the comments, everything that the council had to ask and everything, but Matt had to say was all great, and it just puts everything back in y'all lap to see which way we want to go with this. Any decision that you make, we're willing to agree with, whether we like it or not. But it'll be what's in the best interest of our employees, and two, what's in the best interest of the city. This is not about Alvin Richard. It's about the employees that I will have to lay off, and two, saving the city $19 million that you can do something else with other than paying it to me or any other company over these 3-year periods. And I appreciate your time for listening to what we have to say. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you guys. I want to thank everybody who participated. I wish that former senior advisor and Congressman Richmond was still here, and I wish that Mr. Torres was still here. You know, it was said that everything has to be about race, but as we were having this discussion, I wrote another term down. This isn't just about race, it's about wealth and wealth disparity. And an issue that has plagued this community. And in this city, it's so often to get together politically. So then the question is, how do we transition to get together economically? If that person isn't my person, we don't support them. If that person isn't my business person, in many cases, there hasn't been a collective to come together to support each other. But I do know that something that has to happen in this town for every business person, whether they're white or black or Asian or Hispanic, the data doesn't lie. The data says that the disparity is worse today than it was pre-Katrina. The data says that poverty for young black boys and girls are worse today than it was pre-Katrina. The data says that the wealth gap in earnings between whites and blacks, even given the raises, is worse today than it was pre-Katrina.
Yes.
So how does a city win when one community loses?
That's right.
And it's easy to highlight the successes, but I, for the life of me, especially in this part of my political life, why is it so very hard for everyone to get together, knowing that when the pie increases for certain people, it only grows the pie for the people who already have their piece? Why is there inability? And this is for black folk too, because we can only seem to get together in many cases when it's in our best interest or our political person, not the general interest, especially with the numbers the way they are economically, and shows that the African-American community, while many are winning, in general, is their relationship to the per capita, they're losing. We learned that at the Congressional Black Caucus, that in the African community, only 3 cents of our dollar stays in our community. Well, whose fault is that? I don't know. We shouldn't blame white folk or business people who take advantage of that. But when you're talking about impacting the whole, crime, housing, families, education, Mr. Torrey, Mr. Davila, if that doesn't factor into what you think and how you provide opportunity, then we continue being the murder capital in 6 different eras. We continue the downward trend economically. Hispanics have doubled African-American per capita income post-Katrina, household post-Katrina. So what is going on or not going on? Where in a city that's majority African-American, the African-American politicians can't get together, and too often the African-American business people can't get together unless we're faced with a crisis where one of our outstanding, iconic figures are faced with an issue that jeopardizes his economic and social standing. Why don't we get together before it gets to this point? Why do we have our favorites? And our favorites are not everybody in this city, but the favorites that we benefit from. So for me, maybe this is an opportunity for us to think about this. And a lost William, I said that the very first meeting, Mr. Tory, remember? When I said, if we lose these African-American prime contractors, are we aware of the social and economic impact? And do we have something in place to mitigate that? Go look at the record. I don't think we think like that. I think too often we think about how can government benefit, but not how the people benefits while government benefits. So hopefully this greater discussion will be where white and Black and Asian and Hispanic, at some point we'll sit down and take a view of New Orleans and say, you know what? What city is going to be safe and wholesome when the majority of its citizens have the highest poverty statistics in America? What city is there where people are going to be able to buy homes when, even though some have good jobs at good wages, that the majority, a third or more of that city, lives at or below the poverty level? When are we going to come together to collectively foster that discussion and come up with solutions? It wasn't yesterday. It seems we're still focusing on race, so it ain't today. But at what point do we empower the largest part of this community so that they can enjoy all the fruits of this community and everything that the American dream is supposed to provide? Maybe I'm just idealistic, and that ain't about no one voting for me. That's about an old man with a 13-year-old and a 7-year-old. And you would hope that at some point those kids wouldn't be destined to being part of the largest social class that has the highest statistics of poverty number. And I think that should concern us all. And that's not just about race, but it's about how fast we get to a point where every race has the same opportunity. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We need to move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
We should,
Don't need to move, we don't have a quorum.
Councilmember, we just want to make note that the item number 5 for motion 2343 was already voted on.
Disregarded. Guys, thank you. Disregard 5, 4 was voted on already, correct? All right, guys, everybody have a great day. And bless you all and thank y'all for coming.